Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Wherever you're joining us from this morning, whether that is the Eastern US, where I am, from British Columbia, where some of our folks from BCIT are joining us from, or the UK, it's a pleasure to have you with us. My name is Keith Warburg. I am the Chief Marketing Officer at StageClip. I come to StageClip after 10 years of serving as Marketing and PR Director at universities across the Southeast, and many of our team members have also served in higher education before coming over to StageClip. And we're excited to tell you a little bit more this morning about NameCheck, our new platform for pronouncing names correctly at graduation using artificial intelligence that we've developed. I know this is a hot topic, and we're excited to jump into it. I do want to ask that you keep your microphones muted as we go through. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end, and we'll go through and we'll answer those questions. But to start us off, I'm going to introduce Rupert, our CEO and co-founder. And Rupert, why don't you tell us just a little bit about how we as a company decided to pursue this technology and what sort of our reasoning was behind it, and why we've decided to offer it for free this season to the greater ecosystem for graduation.
And so we're about personalization as a business and as a company, and I've spent my life doing things where we try to make moments personal for people, particularly at times like graduation. And during the pandemic, when the world was going crazy, there were no live events and so on, we created a virtual graduation platform. And that meant that we had these blocks of technology that we were using for the virtual graduation experience that we could start to use back in live events. And one of those things that we had was a name pronunciation AI tool. And so we repurposed some of our tech and said, well, let's give something back to the ecosystem. Let's give something back to the ecosystem where we can give some real benefit to graduates, their families, and our clients or prospective clients. So that's where we came from. But all of this is about one thing, and it's about building those moments of connection with an audience. And so Matthew mentioned that he was creating 1,800 moments, individual moments for people as they walked across the stage at Vanderbilt. And there'll be some institutions here that are doing 3 times, 5 times that. So you might have 10,000 individual moments. And so a moment is broken down. It's actually got a great acronym into 4 component parts, and the acronym is actually EPIC. So there's a moment of elevation, there's a moment of pride, there's a moment of insight, and there's a moment of connection. And there's a wonderful book, which I'm holding up here now, actually called The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath. And I recommend any event organizer to get this book, because this is the Bible on how you can create memories and peak moments for individuals at events. So that's how we started it, and that's why we've done it, and I'm very ready to show it.
Excellent. So let's real quick, Matthew, why don't you tell us just a little bit about why we've decided to make this a free offering at really no cost this season to anyone who wants to get involved with it.
Yeah, Keith. So what's interesting is since we started as a company, we're a technology company, so we're constantly looking to innovate and to get client feedback. That's a big thing with us is, okay, where are we today? Where do we want to be tomorrow? Where do we want to be is by getting that client feedback, and that's driving our innovation side. And so through the pandemic, we developed a whole suite of different products and technologies to assist during that period. And so out of that, we developed some technology that now we're able to use for NameCheck and to help with exactly what we've been talking about. There's different options out there from other companies as far as being able to do phonetic checks and recording students' names and things like that. Number of great companies, number of them that I've worked with when I was at Vanderbilt. But usually they're all part of a bundle and things like that. And so over the years, we keep getting feedback from clients saying, boy, we love what you do as far as the stage clips, what you did over virtual and what you do in person. Do you have anything that can help us with this moment? We want the moment that you're creating for the students to keep to be as good as we can, but that starts with the name pronunciation. And so we decided to do something as a one-off where it's just a very um, targeted and isolated product for one specific purpose. And we wanted to make sure we made this as available as possible to clients out there, knowing, as Rupert said and Keith said, and I've said, we've all had our personal experiences with it. And so for this season, we have created NameCheck and made it free to use by institutions, simply so you can have this as a tool and as a benefit to be able to get that moment right. It's also obviously a way to introduce you to StageClip and what else we do, but we just thought it was important to just go ahead and get it out there without any charge and make it very simple to try to eliminate as many of these bad situations. We don't want any more of those Jimmy Fallon moments right now. So that's kind of the reason why we're doing it for free this season, and kind of the catalyst of us creating it out of technologies we'd made for a bigger suite, and why we kind of did it as a standalone.
Yeah, I can tell you as a former PR director for a couple different universities, that was always the most fun conversations that you get to have at the end of the season was with parents and grads who were not thrilled about how that went. So I know that that's a sigh of relief for my peers out there as well. Rupert, why don't you, we've got about, I think, 12 minutes left. Why don't you take just a few minutes, walk us kind of through the process. It's super easy. It's, I think, 3 steps to get up and going. You can be ready in about 10 minutes. But why don't you show us kind of a little bit about what the platform looks like?
Yeah, sure. So as Keith says, 3 very simple steps. In order to do this, you need one thing, and that's a names list of your graduates. That names list gets put into our system. A pronunciation is generated for every single graduate. The graduate is then able to listen to that pronunciation, change it if necessary, or confirm it, and then your name readers are able to go in, look at the names, listen to them, and then repeat them correctly afterwards. So very simply is you can come to the landing page here, stageclip.com/namecheck, which we can give you after, or some of you may have already been on there already. And then you come to the system and it's in an empty state. But basically, for each of your events, you'll create an event in the system here. So we give that event a title. So we might say economics, for example. It might be the economics ceremony. And then depending on where you are in the world, and now we could have a slight battle, you can choose your language and indeed your accent. And so I will choose the top one here, which is English US. You've got a choice of voice actors, male and female. So if we listen to this.
John Smith.
Just checking we've got sound. Thumbs up if we've got, okay, great. And, or a male voice actor.
John Smith.
And that's you up and running with your first event. At this point, then you can come in and upload your names list in an Excel file. Just take that and pop it in there. And then you're matching your headers from your spreadsheet to what's in here in the system. So a couple of things that are necessary to make it work. You need to have a student ID and a student email address. Those 2 things are the validation that allows a student to make any changes and for you to know that there's no bad actors or spurious things going on. So that's important. There are some data privacy issues, obviously, with that, and in different regions of the world. So we have GDPR here in the UK and Europe. The Canadian privacy policy is obviously fairly strict as well. So we have documentation which covers that and which we are prepared to sign as well. But basically, you come in, you match the columns to what's here. Now in this spreadsheet here, just to show you, we've got a last name here and a first name here, but we've also got another whole column here where it's just a full name. And so you can choose which way you bring data into the system depending on how you're set up to run your graduation ceremonies. So some spreadsheets I've seen, people have got last names, first names in different columns. Some have got all 3 names, as you see here in a column. Others have got first name, middle name, last name in 3 different columns. So it really depends on how your spreadsheet is prepared in the first place. But if we just take full name here, for example, and then the email address here, then we're done. There's also an option to include things like graduation awards and titles and things like that. So BSc honours and geography or whatever it might be if you wanted to. Then we confirm the import. So thank you. So what happens is then once your names list is in the system, you're given a unique link for each of those ceremonies. So you then take that unique link, you copy it, and you put it in your comms to your students to say, looking forward to having you at graduation. Please go and log in here with your email and your student ID, listen to your name and make sure that you're happy with it. So the students then click on the link and come to a page like this. Obviously, yours would be branded with whatever your logo is and colors, and those are some things that you'll enter at the start. You'll just upload a logo, put your name in, put your email address in, and so on, as you would do a standard website. So 2 of those students that are in there, I happen to have an email address for, and an ID for. These are, of course, fake, but nevertheless, it will give you a flavour of what's going on. So then the student logs in, they'll see this, and they can listen to their name.
Tong AI.
So at that point, this person might say, actually, that's not how I want it pronounced. And they've got 2 options. The first is to say, actually, I want it pronounced more like Tong A, for example.
Tong I.
Or they might then say, okay, I'll just tweak that slightly.
Tong A.
Okay, that's how I want it to sound. I'm happy with that. The other option is that the student can come in and self-record their own pronunciation. So quite often with some names, some Chinese names particularly, they can be written one way but pronounced maybe 3 different ways, and it depends on dialect, region, and so on. So that means that they can record how they want their name to sound into the system and then confirm it. So once that's done, they confirm it, and then they're through to finish, which means that your admin, there we go. You can see that it's it now says that that name is in review. So you get 3 different states. The first state is the suggested pronunciation. So if someone comes into the system and does nothing, then the suggested pronunciation is what is available. So you can come in and listen to the suggested pronunciation.
Zainalabdin Alakbarov.
Or in this instance here, where that name has been changed, you can see it's in review. So what that allows you to do is to come in and listen and just double check that there's nothing untoward going on, that the name is the name that you've got written in your files, or that there's no swearing or whatever, so that you can have a listen.
Ahmed Bokai.
You can then approve that, and they're in the system as approved. And so when you come back to look at your list, you'll see there that now that student is confirmed. There is also another confirmation state as well. So let's say a student comes in, and we'll just log in one more time.
And Rupert, while we're going through that process, we do have a question from Kiri. So does the system send reminders to grads who don't review their name pronunciation? So if they haven't answered the first email, will it send them a reminder?
No, that is, all the communications come from the institutions, not from our platform. So that is something that, you know, a follow-up could be sent from the institution. And the reason for that is that if they haven't been into our platform in the first place, then we haven't got their permission to email them. And if we did decide to do that type of comms, then there's a whole whitelisting process that goes into play, which is quite cumbersome. So we wanted to make it as easy and quick as possible for people. So in this case, this individual comes in,
Z-Man Chan.
says, "Yep, I'm happy with that," hits confirm. And so at that point, that then means that they are confirmed as well.
All right, so Rupert, another question from Jessica. Some students have preferred names that are different than their actual names. For example, my first name is John, but I wanted to go by Keith at graduation. Could we put our preferred name into that space to make sure it's said at the ceremony? And follow-up question, what if I wanted to change it to Marty McFly at Georgia Southern University? How would I make sure that that doesn't pass through to the ceremony?
So that's when you would come to this, you'd know that it was in review, you'd come in and it says Marty McFly, and you go, right, I reject that one, I don't approve it. And then at that point, if you wanted to, you could come in and record something that you wanted to be said in its place.
Yeah, what's nice about that too, on that question, on that screen that Rupert's, oh, Rupert, will you go back to that screen you were just
Sure.
on? Is what you can see here is at the top left, that is the name that you entered as an institution for that student. And then under the phonetic name, that's what the student changed it to. So at a glance, you can see, did this student simply put in a phonetic name that is trying to help pronounce the name that is existing in that top left corner that you entered for that student? Or did they put in Marty McFly, which is totally different than Matthew Red? Clearly not Matthew just trying to get read. So at just a visual glance, it's very easy for you as an administrator to see, is this a departure and they're just trying to be different? Plus, but to that point, I guess that's where you can make your judgment call. Is this student saying, I don't go by William, I go by Bill, and it's Bill Red? And that seems like, okay, that's a natural transition. That's okay. But if it says William Red and they go Marty McFly, that's a flag for you, obviously, to say, okay, I need to reach back out to that student, see what's going on, or just disregard it and move on with their traditional. But at least at a glance, you can see those differences very easily.
Yeah,
Rupert,
and
another
actually, I had an interesting question yesterday from someone who's managing. She's one individual actually managing large numbers of students, and everyone seems to have left her office, and she hasn't replaced staff yet, so she's thin on the ground on time. And she was concerned actually about, no, she's got 3,500 students. Would she have to go through and review all these names herself? And I explained to her that in that situation, actually, you can also have your name readers do the review. So she's got one or two name readers for each of her ceremonies. And so if she delegates that responsibility, then it might be like a name reader might have to review 200 names, the ones they're going to read out. And so they can do that check as well. Whereas, for a one person, one man office kind of thing, to have to go through 3,500 is a bit overwhelming.
That
is
top, that
yeah, and
top
we don't.
right corner where it says invite reviewers, where you can add those individuals. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
so that's what I was about to show. So once you've got your list in the system and you want to invite a reviewer to come to listen to names so they can repeat them correctly on the day, then you just pop an email address in here. This then sends them an email, and they're then able to log in and come here, and they can see, okay, am I ceremony one or am I doing economics or whatever it is, and then they can come in. And
yeah, and there's no limit on the number of reviewers currently. That's correct.
correct, yeah.
Mhm. Excellent.
And then for an
So
admin or even a name reader, there are a few other things that may be helpful. So all the data can be exported as a CSV file. You can also export all the sound files as MP3s if you need to use them in a different way or in another format. And then you've also got the options. Let's say you put 200, 300 people into a ceremony, for example, and you've got two extras who sign up at the last minute or they phone up or whatever it is. Then you can add a couple of people and they can also do that. And also, actually, if you wanted to even add another list, let's say you had another 10 students or 20 students, so you wanted to upload another list and add it to the ceremony, you can.
So two more really helpful questions, Rupert. I think one about the export. So when we are exporting out that list, is that including the non-approved or rejected names? Is it a full download or is it just
So
the ones that have been approved?
full download, as I understand it. I'll have to go back and double check for sure with the tech team, but I think it's a full download, and you can decide to filter things out by the columns in the spreadsheet.
Yep, and we'll have that status column in there as well.
Yeah.
Let's have two questions here on timing. So one, how far in advance should or can you use this process for the ceremony? And two, could you incorporate additions even the day of if you wanted to?
So yes, I always think the earlier the better as you're going through your process. But you could certainly add someone the day before if you wanted to, and give them that option to check their name pronunciation. You could potentially even do it on the day of, but whether or not they would take the time to review it and so on, I'm not sure. And I don't. Again, it would depend on how you work with your name readers as to whether or not, if they're the kind of people that review a list, say the night before they're due to do the honors, then they may miss it. So it certainly can be done. It's whether or not your other processes would allow it to be beneficial.
Yeah, Rupert, another question there. If you're doing your review of this as an administrator, can you see who on your reviewer team has gone through and looked at it?
No, that function doesn't exist. You'd need to communicate directly with them.
Yep. So that'll be one that we can definitely add to the list of things to look at.
But
So I
yeah,
think
that sounds like a
that's a
good
helpful
backlog
thing,
improvement.
Jonathan. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then one more question, and I can take this one from Lauren at RIT. So is this function on mobile devices for students and reviewers? Yes. So this is a mobile-friendly site. It's responsive. It's not an app that they have to download. They can go to the site. They can go through and use it on their phone, tablet, desktop.
Correct.
Excellent. Okay, so if you have other questions, let us know. But I want to just toss over to Matthew real quick. Matthew, we've got one question here about pricing. So free for this year. What's the plan for future years? And what are some other? I think it's important for us to talk about the name scanning as well, because I think that's one of the things we talked about. If you're doing it the day of and you want to use this somehow in your ceremony, how can we make that happen?
Show this page. So if you go to stageclip.com/NameCheck, it's also, if you just go to stageclip.com, you'll see the NameCheck green button there in the top. You can click on that, and that'll take you to this page, which shows you how to sign up, and kind of gives a summary of what we talked about today. Pricing, as we talked about, there's not a cost for it right now. It's something that as we get through this season, and kind of look at it as a company, we'll determine exactly what that pricing might look like in the future. I know if you are working with us through our other services, like where we create stage clips out of the content that you already produce, that's what most people know us through right now, that you can use this service. At this point, that's going to be a complimentary service as part of that package. So don't have exact pricing on what that might look like after this season. But that's something that we'll be looking at, come May, June, and evaluating that. Let's see. So then we also have the ability to, is the really nice thing, as Rupert showed, you can export either just a CSV file, or you can export the MP3s. What's really nice is what really differentiates this from other products is the fact that students are able to go on, hear their name, and then type in a phonetic, and then instantly get validation and verification of their name right back, as opposed to putting in a phonetic or recording their name and then hoping someone interprets it correctly. They know whoever's going to read their name will have it exactly how they want it heard when they listen to it. But the other thing you can do is export those MP3s and then incorporate those recordings directly into your ceremony, where you can use a card scanning system. Students walk up, they've got their card in hand, it has a QR code, you scan that, and then that allows you to then attach to different technologies like the scan and play. So that scan and play could be where they scan it, and then the name reader has something in their ear that they could hear the name literally right before the moment they say it. So they can hear Matthew read. And then as they read my card, they scan it, Matthew read. Pause for 1 second, Matthew read. And then once you get in that rhythm, it sounds quite natural because they're hearing a name, saying a name, hearing a name, saying a name. So it's very rhythmic in that sense. Or you could tie it directly to your PA system and your speakers at the event itself. So when that student comes up, they're getting to hear the name that they already heard themselves and make sure they crafted correctly across the speakers. So again, that takes the earnest off of you, the individual, puts it on the student, and then now it allows you to get those names exactly how the student wanted it. Plus, that also gives you a sense of regularity and consistency within your events because you don't have different name readers that might say Matthew read and the other one say Matthew read. They're all at a common pace. So then the really nice thing too is that you're already in the system. If you're using the name check, you've entered your student list, you've done the few easy steps that it takes to set that up. Then as you get to the event, if you want to transition at the last minute or a month out at any time and say, hey, I'd really like to provide the students with an actual stage clip, then all you need to do at that point is really submit your ceremony footage. And And that's very easy because, again, you're already doing that. We don't show up on site. So you don't have to change anything about the videography, adding cameras, changing camera angles, anything like that. We can use your existing footage to go through and create the different clips just simply by tying that in. So it's an easy transition on that as well. So Keith, hopefully I answered all those questions on that. But please, if there's other questions, drop them in the chat function. You can always email me if you have follow-up questions. It's a very complicated email address. It's Matthew, not Matt, at stageclip.com with 2 T's.
That's great. So thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Rupert. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A, and I know we're a little bit over time, so I want to thank all of you for your attention, for your input. Hopefully this is a helpful tool. It's something that I think many of us at StageClip have had the opportunity to work in higher education for quite a few years before coming over to the company. So we understand some of the struggles. We're still in touch with a lot of our colleagues as well to make sure that we can provide whatever service that we can, and we're happy to provide this at no charge to help the ecosystem and help you guys get names correct for your graduates. If you have any questions afterwards, like I said, I'm going to follow up this webinar with an email. It'll include a recording as well as a resource including a case study from Gonzaga University, who has worked with us to do the NameCheck and card scanning technology. So you get to see a little bit about how they've done that, as well as some resources if you have any other questions to follow up and get registered. So thank you all very much. Have an excellent rest of your day, whether that's evening or morning or afternoon. And thank you again for joining us today. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.